On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Spokane area, welcome to our 2022 primary election candidate featuring candidates for Spokane County Prosecuting Attorney. All voters in Spokane County will be able to vote in this race. I'm Ann Murphy, your moderator, and Mike Bell of the League is the timer. Election day for the 2022 primary election is Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. Ballots will be mailed to all registered voters beginning July 13th, and the return ballot must be postmarked or deposited in conveniently located ballot boxes no later than 8 p.m. on Election Day. This is a top two primary in which the two highest vote getters, regardless of party preference, will advance to the November general election. This forum can be seen as an equivalent to a job interview, as you, the voter, learn more about the candidates seeking to hold office. And you, the voters, are the ones who will determine by your vote, making your informed decision for hiring your representation when you mark your ballot. Citizens can register to vote by mail or online at votewa.gov by July 25th, 2022, or in person on Election Day at the Spokane County Elections Office, 1033 West Gardiner Avenue, or at Center Place, 2426 North Discovery Place, Spokane Valley. For other questions about casting your ballot or information about the candidates, contact the Spokane County Elections Office at 509-477-2320 or visit their website, SpokaneCounty.org/elections, or on the League of Women Voters online voters guide, vote411.org. I will be asking the candidates questions that have been formulated by the League's Voter Services Committee and will ask as many questions as time allows. Before the questions begin, the candidates will have up to 30 seconds to introduce themselves and tell you, the voters, why they are running. They will have up to 1 minute to answer each question with additional time for rebuttal or follow-up question as might be appropriate. Each candidate will have the opportunity for a 30-second closing statement, and the candidates have in front of them a countdown clock so they know how their time is expiring. The first speaker will alternate with each question. So now, to meet the candidates, they are Stephanie Collins, hello, Deb Conklin, Larry Haskell, and Stephanie Olson. And so starting with Stephanie Collins, you'll have 30 seconds to tell us why you're running for Spokane County Prosecuting Attorney.
Thank you. I am hoping you hire me for this job because it is time for a change. We need new leadership, bold, fresh, and engaged leadership. As a 28-year veteran of the prosecutor's office, I have earned the trust of my colleagues and community members who have heard my message. I intend to honor that trust and support by reinstating your faith in the office to which I've dedicated my career. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb Conklin.
Thank you for having this forum. This is a great opportunity for all of us, and thanks for those who came tonight and those who watch at home. The most important role of the prosecuting attorney is to make our community as safe as we can while implementing justice. That is not happening right now in our community. We need change, as Stephanie Collins has said. The problem is that I am the only person on this panel who has learned how to be a prosecuting attorney in a different office with a different culture. So if we want cultural change, if we want
you're going to have to pick that up as we go through some of our questions. Thank you. Mr. Haskell.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the League for holding this event and also the City of Spokane for giving us this forum. I am running for a third term as the County Prosecuting Attorney. During the last term here, as we just finished it, we navigated through the pandemic and we also navigated through a wave of retirements. We have made the office a better place to work by implementing people programs, and if I'm returned to the office, I pledge to you to continue to use evidence-based reforms, fight for a modernized correctional center.
And I'm going to have to cut you off there. Hopefully we'll pick up your other points as we go along. Stephanie Olson.
Good evening. Thank you again for having us tonight at this debate. I am running because I am concerned by what has happened in our communities and what has happened to the safety of the people of Spokane County and how we feel safe in our communities. I am from Spokane. I was born and raised here. I've been a business owner. I've been a prosecuting attorney, and I am currently an attorney general where I defend the most vulnerable of the victims in our communities.
Okay, thank you. We'll proceed through some questions, and hopefully more of those points come out that you wanted to be able to make here. This first question will go to Ms. Conklin. The county prosecutor has responsibilities that span from hiring and supervision of staff and management of a large department to establishing policies that guide the staff on how civil, criminal, and family law matters are handled. If you are hiring a new prosecutor, what traits would you look for? And do you believe that the prosecutors should reflect the race, ethnicity, and gender of Spokane County? Starting with Ms. Conklin, you will each have 1 minute.
What I would look for in a deputy when I'm hiring is someone who cares about the people of this county, who wants to see justice done both on the civil side or the criminal side, and who has a passion for representing people and to present the best possible outcomes for situations. I would look for people who have a history of compassion and effectiveness and the ability to talk to people in a way that helps them know that you care about what they're saying to you. I do think, in response to your last part of your question, that it's critically important that all throughout the law enforcement system, from police and sheriffs to prosecutors to judges, that we reflect the makeup of the community.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Haskell.
I absolutely agree that we should hire not only the best person for the job, which I think is very important to the public. I hire competent lawyers, and I will continue to do so. However, we do hire a diverse group, and by my own deputies who tell me, and just looking across the room, we have a diversity of ethnicity as well as religious and other backgrounds in the office, and we will continue to do so.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Olson.
Thank you. In hiring a new deputy prosecutor, I would look for integrity, experience, and their community involvement, and their knowledge of Spokane County and the people that live here and the people that we serve. They need to have an understanding of the power and complexities of being a prosecutor and what that means to the communities that it affects with every one of their decisions and how it affects the communities that we serve.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Collins.
Thank you. I would like to take a moment to say that I currently work with a phenomenal group of individuals. All of them have an amazing work ethic, and I'm proud to call them my colleagues. And for 28 years, I have had a great group of folks, both attorneys and staff, with whom I've been working. And I'm currently on my 4th elected prosecutor, so 4 different people have brought different traits into the office. And everybody represents a different trait. I believe that an employee should have a passion for prosecution, similar to the one that I have for having done this for 28 years. Somebody who believes in holding offenders accountable, somebody who believes in justice, and most importantly, has a solid ethical core, because at the end of the day, the reputation of the prosecutor's office depends on the ethics and the trust in the community.
Thank you. And now our next question will start with Mr. Haskell. And it just happens to reflect on the mission of the Spokane County Prosecutor's website states, it's our mission to protect the public by providing competent and ethical prosecution, superior victim services, and seeking justice in every case. So obviously, if you're going for this job, you agree with the position statement, but could you please expand upon what seeking justice should entail? Mr. Haskell.
Yes, seeking justice has to do with making sure that the office is following the applicable statutes, the constitutional scheme, the court rules, the rules of professional conduct, the rules of evidence, and the case law that interprets those things. We carry out principled prosecutions based on those guidelines, and we use the statutory scheme under 994A411 for charging, and we also use the applicable standards and the rules of ethics for the disposition of cases. We do seek justice in every case, but justice, as you know, varies depending on which side it is, but our job is to make sure that it meets the criteria that prosecutors operate under, and in particular the rules of ethics and the RPCs.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Olson.
Thank you. In seeking justice in the prosecutor's office, it is very important that you understand the complexities of what your decisions do for the community. You must understand where the communities are, who the communities are, and what it means within those communities to have a prosecution or to have victims that trust the office, that trust the prosecutors. Justice is very complex, and it is very hard to exactly define. However, it is so important to everyone that we serve that we consider what is most important, which is the justice in upholding the Constitution of our country.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
Thank you. That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. Justice takes on two forms. We have justice for defendants and justice for victims. I'm going to start with victims first. I'm currently assigned to the domestic violence unit, and we have a backlog of unreviewed cases extending over 2 years, which means that people who've had a gun pointed at them, whose children have witnessed them being abused, have not seen justice, and we are creating the next generation of victims and perpetrators by ignoring those crimes. Since I made this public, though, Mr. Haskell has assigned somebody to sign up those cases. I guess that's flattery. There's also justice for defendants and understanding what brings them into the criminal justice system and what it'll take to get them out of the criminal justice system is equally important. We owe both classes of individuals, both victims and defendants, people who are accused of crimes, justice, and we need to listen to them. Thank you.
Ms. Conklin.
A very wise person once said that justice is not only a system needs to not only be just, but it needs to be perceived to be just. And so one of the things that we need in our prosecuting attorney's office is the accountability and the transparency to the community so that people can feel like we're getting justice. And justice has to do, as Ms. Collins has pointed out, with victims and defendants, but it also has to do with the community. If we want justice, we have to keep in mind all three of those pieces of the entities that deserve justice. When a person commits a crime, they cause damage to the community. They cause a break in the community. And so part of repairing that means finding ways to bring healing to the community. We also need justice pre-trial, during trial, and post-trial. So we need systems that recognize those three times when justice is critical.
Okay, so we're going to follow this thread a little bit more with another duty listed of the prosecutor in the RCWs is to seek to reform and improve the administration of criminal justice and stimulate efforts to remedy inadequacies or injustices in substantive or procedural law. So if elected, how would you act to remedy injustices that you perceive in Spokane County? And we'll start with you, Ms. Olson.
Thank you. One of the ways that we need to remedy some of the injustices is we need to look at the reforms that are possible as well as the resources that are available, that are already available in our communities. As we know, 95% of all people who go to jail are also released from jail, and it is just a simple cycle. If we don't stop it while it's going by giving opportunities and holding people accountable, we will not ever stop the cycle. There are many ideas in the Blueprint for Reform which should be looked at and balanced with the safety of our community and what can be done with those resources.
Okay,
Thank
Ms. Collins.
Thank you. One of the things or traits that I bring to this race is the ability to listen. While my learning curve as an elected or as a politician has been vertical, what I have learned is how much I don't know. And so I continue to listen to members of the community, and I have spoken with the Spokane County Against Racism members, and I have learned so much about their perspective. I've spoken with business leaders in town and have learned so much about their perspective, and I continue to do this throughout my journey, not only as a prosecutor, but as a single mother of 2 college children and through life. So I want to listen to what concerns people. The other thing that I bring to the table is an open mind and ideas on how to address the revolving door of criminal activities. And that involves getting to the root of what is bringing people into the system and letting them help themselves get out of the system.
Thank you. Ms. Conklin.
Thank you. Over the last decade, we have spent huge amounts of time and energy and funds to try to look at the Spokane County criminal justice system and to figure out what will make it more just, what will improve it. We had the Department of Justice Pattern and Practice Investigation in 2013 and 14. We had the Blueprint for Reform in 2013. We've had the MacArthur Grant since 2016, and we've invested a lot of energy in these reforms. And so the first thing we need to do is implement some of those ideas from those. We need to expand and improve the Mental Health Crisis Stabilization Facility, which is a place for police to take people who are in crisis, either through mental health or drug and alcohol abuse, where they can be treated rather than incarcerated. We need to embrace supervised release pre-trial so that we can help people get started to deal with the problems they have.
Thank you. Mr. Haskell.
Spokane County spends a lot of time and also a lot of money on alternatives to incarceration. We, through the Spokane Regional Law and Justice Council, spend a lot of time looking at alternatives to incarceration, to treatment that allows people to assess and to deal with the criminogenic needs that they demonstrate. The Mental Health Crisis Stabilization Facility is one of those options. In addition to the fact that we offer many diversion programs, we've been doing our own felony diversions for some period of time. We used to have a program called Early Case Resolution, but the Public Defender's Office quit supporting that some time ago, and there aren't that many as there used to be in the county jail pending resolution, so they don't settle as many. But we still look at doing those things as well. In addition, I lobby the legislature for additional tools for us to use here in Spokane County.
Okay, thank you. So I have another one related here to the Blueprint for Reform. We know that since 1996, Spokane County has had therapeutic drug court with over 600 graduates. And the Blueprint Reform Status Report that came out in October 2020 notes that this diversion court is racially homogeneous. An equity screen was recommended to ensure that the participants properly represented those facing charges. If elected, how will you act to implement or support this equity, and other comments you might like to make related to equity as well would fit here? Ms. Collins?
Thank you for the question. It's a very timely question because just the other day I was asked by one of the judges why our drug court and mental health court numbers are dropping. And I intend to reverse that trend. I intend to utilize drug and mental health courts as as a rehabilitative tool as often as we can. What my plan involves is changing the offender dynamic and having offenders, instead of plea bargaining, put together accountability plans where they put forth a plan to address how their proposal to settle the case, it holds them accountable, how it constitutes justice for the victims, and what they themselves are going to do to get out of the criminal justice system. And therein lie the therapeutic courts. I'd also like to see a veterans court, because the veterans have done so much for our country and have come back through no fault of their own with a number of challenges. Also, a domestic violence court needs to be expanded.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Conklin.
Thank you. Our therapeutic courts, the felony drug courts and other courts, including the veterans courts, are very successful models. In fact, Timothy Fitzgerald, who some of you know, he's the court clerk, was telling me just a few weeks ago that our veterans court is one of the most successful in the country at helping veterans succeed and not come back into the system. It is a model for other courts. So we have these excellent courts. The problem is that they're not being used. So Sandra Altschuler, who used to be the coordinator of the county's federal drug and mental health courts, in September of 20 said that we could do so much more if only we had a prosecutor's office that supported those courts and would refer people to those courts. I also have some unique gifts for making sure that those courts become more reflective of the racial diversity in our community. I'm a trained facilitator in Why Race Matters, History, Systems, and Strategies.
Thank you. Mr. Haskell.
Thank you, and I do appreciate the question. The thing to remember about the drug court, the mental health court, and we do have a veterans court as well as a DV court that is currently, we're working to expand as we speak to the felony level along with the DV coalition. But the important thing to remember, these courts are voluntary. Prior to the Blake decision, which basically stopped the prosecution and is causing us to undo the convictions of many people, we used to give out more drug court offers in a year from the prosecutor's office than they've had graduates in 20 years. And we've always supported additional mental health spots as well. So these courts are up, they're running. We are having some issues with the drug court because of the Blake decision. But they are voluntary, and as long as they are voluntary, we won't be forcing anybody against their will.
Okay. Ms. Olson.
Thank you. I have the advantage of having worked in nearly all of those courts. The domestic violence court is new. However, I have worked and I was part of starting the veterans court, the DUI courts. I worked in the drug court as well as helping to expand those courts. What I would do as the elected is that I would make sure that those courts are expanded, and I would open up what can be let into those courts. The Blake decision, which did come out of the current prosecutor's office, has made it very difficult on drug cases that they can't be prosecuted. But they are the root core of so many of our crimes, and it is very important that we are able to expand the courts and use them to give opportunities and then also to hold people accountable, which is very important.
Okay. We'll move into a little bit different area here. The prosecutor is asked to determine whether charges will be brought against a law enforcement officer for use of force. Please describe how new state legislation could change your determinations on these matters if you were elected as prosecutor. And we'll start with you, Ms. Conklin.
So the new legislation is an attempt to make the standards for charging a police officer who engages in behavior that results in damage or injury or loss of life, similar standards to the general public. The problem is, even with the new laws, the standard still says that if a law enforcement officer believes that they're in danger, they're still entitled to use even deadly force. And what we have seen across the country in those cases is that every police officer who is charged or accused says, I believed I was in danger. We need to have a standard that is more objective and that says it's not just did this person believe they were in danger, but would an objective person in that situation believe they were in danger?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Haskell.
That actually is the current standard. So the law recently changed. It started out with I-940. And right now, besides the reasonable belief, probable cause, that an officer needs to believe that somebody is either committing, about to commit, or has committed a felony, and whether or not the officer can use deadly force has to do with whether or not the person represents a threat to the public or to the officer or to others. But in any case, the officer can make a reasonable mistake of fact. However, his belief in the necessity of the use of deadly force must be objectively reasonable, and that is the current state of the law. That's the standard that I use when I evaluate these kinds of cases, and I know I've taken some criticism because I haven't charged an officer yet, but I haven't found one that I believe has violated the law under the current standard.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Olson.
I would look at the, all of the evidence, all the facts in regards to how the, what the current state of the law is. If there's a law broken, they'd be prosecuted. But it would be clear and concise, and we would have definite facts of what was going on and not just what is out. And I would also, part of it is being transparent with the public and having them understand what is going on and what the facts actually are in the cases, which I would also, as the elected prosecutor, I would make as available as possible.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Collins.
Thank you. As prosecutors, we make discretionary decisions all day long. And two of us can look at the same fact patterns and come up with different conclusions as to whether to file charges or not to file charges. What this ultimately boils down to is whether the public has faith in the elected official who is making or the charging decision or choosing not to file. And right now, that is not always the case, and that's why I'm running, because it is time for the leadership in the prosecutor's office to change, for the community to have faith in their leadership, and that is accomplished by engaging with the public and sharing the decision-making process with the community, how it is that we hold offenders accountable, how it is that we seek justice for victims, how it is that courts, funding sources, and community leaders either help or hindering us. And once we have transparency, then we will have effective leadership and trusted leadership.
Okay, thank you. And so as we move forward in talking about discretionary decisions, racial equity, a variety of things, how do you define implicit bias, and what have you done differently because of training that you've received on this topic? We'll start with you, Mr. Haskell.
It was several years ago, I believe it was 2018, when as part of the Spokane Regional Law and Justice Council, there were classes that were brought forward at several venues, and I made sure that everybody that was available attended one of the sessions. I think there were 3 of them. I attended myself. I also was fortunate enough to attend a community forum wherein Ricky Kidd spoke, and he was a long-term incarcerated, and then eventually his conviction was overturned, and he was a guest speaker there, and his advice was very simple, and I always remember it. I still have his card, and that is, he said, check your bias. Whatever you do, check your bias. Make sure that you're making the right decision for the right reasons. So I think that's a very important aspect of it. Check your bias.
Thank you. Ms. Olson.
Thank you. As the elected prosecutor, I would make sure that every one of our prosecutors are trained to look at their bias, to check their bias. and that it is more refined down. I went to that training as well, and it was very basic. I would like it refined down to what we do as prosecutors and what choices we make, and how our decisions and how our biases affect those decisions. Part of that is also to have our prosecutors be out in the community and to meet the community leaders and to be part of our communities and to understand what is going on with the people that we serve, and that bias is never part of our decision-making in whether to charge a crime or to prosecute a crime. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Collins?
Well, I have a confession. I met, and I alluded to this already, with the Spokane County Against Racism Coalition. And I went in there and I said, justice is blind. And I said, well, all sorts of things based on my naivete that, well, pushed a lot of buttons. But I was fortunate enough that the people at that meeting trusted me, and they called me up afterwards, 2 of them specifically, and said, would you meet with us? We would like to personally educate you. And we sat down for an hour, and they shared what it means to be born white and what it means to be a Black person in Spokane County. And that is how I intend to lead. By leading by example, by learning, by meeting with people, and by being open-minded to new ideas.
Thank you. Ms. Conklin?
Thank you. Well, to answer the first part of your question, implicit bias is bias that is built into our culture. It's the air we breathe, it's the water we drink. And that's hard sometimes for us to acknowledge or even to recognize. So we're not talking, when we talk about implicit bias, we're not talking about this person is racist or that person is racist. We're talking about how our culture just has certain attitudes that have bias built into it. So one of the things that was stunning to me was a number of years ago, a study came out that showed that all of us, no matter our race or color, even African Americans, when we see a man who is between about 15 and 30 who is Black, we see him as bigger and more dangerous than he is. It is part of how our culture trains us. And so if we're going to deal with implicit bias, we have to get at that deep-rooted misperception that we have been raised to have.
Okay, thank you. So one more question before we go to your closing statements. And this is to give you an opportunity, if there are any other policies, changes in your solutions that you would like to put forward as being the new prosecuting attorney, or expand on any other thing that I had to cut you off on, if you would like. So we will go ahead and start with Ms. Olson.
Thank you. There are a number of leadership issues that are currently part of the prosecutor's office. One, I will make sure that supervisors are trained to be supervisors, that are trained to manage people and to understand how to manage people. It is almost embarrassment that is one of the largest law firms that has no training for their supervisors. I will make sure that people are listening to what the community is telling them. Make sure that they are standing beside victims and listening to the victims and understanding what they want and what they need. I will make sure they are prosecuting the proper offenders and giving the opportunity and accountability that we need in order to solve some of the cycle of jail to jail again.
And I'll have to stop you there, so sorry. Ms. Collins.
Thank you. I have a very specific 4-part plan to, as I say tongue-in-cheek, prosecute myself out of a job. First, reestablish the repeat offender program in which law enforcement, prosecutors, and probation target that small percentage of individuals who wreak the greatest amount of havoc. Number 2, broaden the domestic violence court from 12 to an endless number of people who can come into the court, and establish a felony veterans court, not just a district court veterans court. 3, replace plea bargaining with offender accountability plans put forth by the offenders, addressing taking personal accountability, victim justice, and how they plan to get themselves out of the system. And 3rd, connecting prosecutors with outlying agencies, because I'm finding when I go out to Spangle and when I'm in Liberty Lake and Deer Park and all these small communities, they feel disenfranchised and underrepresented by the prosecutor's office.
Thank you. Ms. Conklin.
This is where my statement that I come from a different culture and was trained in a different culture becomes really important, because the prosecutor's office in which I was trained does not believe in plea bargaining as an established practice. And when we use plea bargaining as an established practice, as we do in Spokane right now, we file a whole lot of charges, and then we plea bargain down to the 1 or 2 that we really wanted to have. And if you look at the Burns report, it will show you statistically how we're charging way more. When people go into jail, they have a whole bunch of charges, and when they get out, they only have 1 or 2. What that does is it means that we can have higher bail, and we're still using a cash bail system that doesn't meet the criminal rules. And so we need to adopt policies that incarcerate fewer people pre-trial before they've been found guilty of anything, and we need to look at the root causes of what causes people to commit crimes so we can reduce repeat offenders.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Haskell.
Thank you. I would take some issue with some of the statements that have been made regarding current policies and training and outreach and standing by victims, and some of that I've heard here tonight. Just to give you an example, when I took over the office in 2014, at the felony level in the DVs, we had a supervisor and 2 felony deputies. And we had 1 misdemeanor deputy embedded in district court. Now we have a supervisor plus 6 additional felony deputies. We used to have 1 victim advocate. Now we have 3 victim advocates in the domestic violence unit. And we are leading with the DV coalition, and we have put together the framework for a DV court. And even in their philosophy, we're gonna crawl, walk, and run on this, because nothing accelerates faster and potentially more deadly than a DV situation.
Okay, thank you. And now we're going to move to your closing statements. This will be 30 seconds, and this is your last pitch to your voters for us tonight. And we'll start with you, Ms. Collins.
Thank you. As a 28-year veteran of the prosecutor's office, I have had the privilege of working with some of the most dedicated staff and attorneys. I have worked in every unit and supervised most of them over the course of these years, working for 4 elected prosecutors. And I have a very specific plan to address the rising crime rates in Spokane. With your vote and support, you can expect bold and transparent leadership and your faith in the prosecutor's office to be instilled. I hope you hire me for this job.
Thank you. Ms. Conklin.
We have admitted in many ways that we need a change in culture in the prosecutor's office. And of all the people who are on this panel tonight, I am the person who has been trained in and experienced and practiced in doing it a different way. And I would bring that experience to this county and offer that way of doing it. I will be conscientious and fair in everything I do. I will listen to all sides of an issue, and I will always give you my best effort and my whole heart. And I hope you will elect me.
Thank you. Mr. Haskell.
Thank you. If the voters return me for a 3rd term to the office, I pledge that I will continue to pursue the evidence-based reforms that we all talk about, that we will seek a modernized community correctional center, that we will work with the legislature to restore police and sentencing tools. We will make sure that the constitutional rights of each of us are protected, that we will continue our aggressive DV position, and we will work with all county law enforcement and have been communicating, coordinating, and training.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Olson.
Thank you. I have the experience, the compassion, and the competence to be your next and best Spokane County prosecutor. I'll put community safety first. I have the experience. For 10 years, I owned a business in this community. For more than 10 years, I worked as a prosecutor in the prosecutor's office, and for the last nearly 4 years, I have worked as an assistant attorney general. I have done civil work, family law, as well as criminal law work, which are all essential to the proper management of the prosecutor's office. I'm sorry, I was looking at the timer.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you. This concludes our 2022 primary election candidate forum featuring candidates for Spokane County Prosecuting Attorney. Again, they are Stephanie Collins, Deb Conklin, Larry Haskell, Stephanie Olson. And some voting reminders before we go. Remember, register to vote online or by mail by July 25th. And you can do same-day registration on Election Day at the Spokane County Elections Office, 1033 West Gardiner Avenue or Center Place, 2426 North Discovery Place, Spokane Valley. Ballots will be mailed to registered voters July 13th through the 15th. Ballots must be postmarked, but no stamp is necessary, or deposited in conveniently located ballot boxes and voter service centers no later than 8 p.m. on Election Day, August 2nd, 2022. For locations of ballot boxes or voter service centers, information about accessible voting units, or other questions about casting your ballot, contact the Spokane County Elections Office, 509-477-2320 or spokanecounty.org/elections. Contact information for the candidates as well as a voter's guide can also be found on the website of the Spokane County Elections Office. Additional information on the candidates can be found on the League of Women Voters online voter guide, vote411.org. For more information about the League of Women Voters, visit our website, lwvspokane.org. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, thank you to our candidates for participating in this forum. We hope this has given you, the voters, the information that will help you make an informed decision when you mark your ballot by August 2nd. Thank you.